I never imagined betrayal would announce itself so violently. It didn't come with whispered confessions or suspicious phone calls. It came with the roar of a motorcycle outside my house and a fist slamming into my front door. That sound alone told me something was wrong, but I still wasn't prepared for what followed. When I opened the door, the man standing there was everything I wasn't. Leather vest, tattooed arms, eyes full of arrogance and rage. He didn't introduce himself, didn't need to. I already knew who he was. My wife's biker lover. The proof of a betrayal I had sensed for months but never fully accepted. The confrontation wasn't about words. It was about territory, ego, and humiliation. He shoved me hard in the chest and accused me of getting in the way, as if my own marriage was something he had every right to claim. In that moment, the emotional wound cut deeper than the physical shove. Years of loyalty, trust, and sacrifice collapsed into a single realization. The person I shared my life with had invited this chaos into my home. She hadn't just cheated. She had chosen someone reckless, someone dangerous, and brought him straight to my doorstep. As he threatened me, bragging openly about the affair, I saw clearly how betrayal often emboldens the worst kind of people. To him, I wasn't a husband or a human being. I was an obstacle. He believed fear would make me back down, that shame would keep me quiet. That belief came from his confidence that my wife had painted me as weak, insignificant, disposable. And that, more than the attack itself, was what ignited the real conflict. Betrayal doesn't just break trust, it rewrites narratives, turning loyalty into weakness and patience into permission. I stayed silent as he continued, letting his assumptions grow. Inside, though, something settled. Not anger, clarity. Betrayal has a way of stripping away illusions. In that moment, I understood that this wasn't just about infidelity. It was about respect, boundaries, and the dangerous consequences of underestimating someone you think you know. He mistook my calm for fear, my restraint for surrender. He had no idea that everything he was doing, every threat, every step closer, was building a case against himself. The real conflict of the story was born right there, not from fists or violence, but from the collision of arrogance and ignorance. He believed he had power because he was loud and aggressive. I knew power doesn't announce itself, it waits. Betrayal may have opened the door, but his attack kicked it wide open, turning a private wound into a personal war. And once that line was crossed, there was no going back. From the moment he stepped inside my space, it was obvious he had already decided who I was. His eyes scanned me the way predators size up prey, quick, dismissive, confident. To him, I was just a man who had lost control of his marriage, a husband too weak to keep his wife loyal, let alone stand up to someone like him. That assumption shaped everything he did next. He spoke louder, moved closer, invaded my personal space with deliberate disrespect. He wanted me to feel small. He wanted confirmation that his version of me was correct. People like him thrive on appearances, leather, muscle, noise. Those things had carried him through most confrontations in his life. He had learned that intimidation works when the other person believes the story being told about them. And my wife, knowingly or not, had helped write that story for him. She had painted me as passive, predictable, harmless. So he came prepared for a simple outcome: scare the husband, assert dominance, walk away victorious. The idea that I might be something else never even crossed his mind. I didn't correct him. I didn't raise my voice or defend my pride. I let the silence do its work. Underestimation is a powerful shield when you know how to use it. Every step he took closer, every insult he threw only deepened his confidence. He mistook my restraint for cowardice, discipline for weakness. He didn't understand that some people are trained to observe first, to measure threats, to stay calm when others unravel. My lack of reaction fed his ego exactly the way it. He circled me slowly, mocking the house, the life I had built, even the photos on the wall. Each comment was meant to provoke a response, to pull me into his chaos. But chaos was his world, not mine. What he didn't see was that while he was performing, I was analyzing his stance, his balance, the way his weight shifted when he got emotional. He had no formal control, just raw aggression and confidence born from never being challenged by someone who didn't panic. That was the danger of underestimating someone based on surface impressions. He assumed power came from fear, that strength meant dominance. He couldn't imagine a man who didn't need to announce himself. In his mind, real threats looked like him, loud, aggressive, visible. He had no framework for understanding quiet competence, for recognizing that the most dangerous people rarely look dangerous at all. The gap between who he thought I was and who I actually was continued to widen with every second. He was relaxed, careless, certain of the outcome. That certainty was his greatest weakness. Because when someone believes they already control the situation, they stop protecting themselves. They stop thinking ahead. They stop noticing details. And in that space, between his confidence and my silence, the balance of power had already begun to shift, even if he didn't realize it yet. The moment of revelation didn't arrive with a dramatic announcement or a shouted confession. It came quietly, almost accidentally, the way truth often does when arrogance pushes too far. He reached into his vest as if to prove a point, flashing a knife just long enough to feel powerful. That single motion changed the tone of everything. I straightened slightly, not out of fear, but instinct. Years of conditioning surfaced without effort. My breathing slowed, my posture shifted. It was subtle, but it was enough. He noticed. His grin faltered for half a second, confusion flickering across his face. Men like him are sensitive to shifts in energy, even if they don't understand them. He joked about it, tried to laugh it off, but his voice lacked the same certainty. I told him, calmly, to put the knife away and step back. Not asked, told. The authority in my voice wasn't learned in a mirror or borrowed from bravado. It was forged in places where mistakes cost lives. That was when the air between us changed completely. He scoffed and demanded to know who he thought he was. I looked him in the eyes and answered, evenly, without raising my voice. I didn't boast or threaten. I simply stated what I did for a living, where I had spent most of my adult life, and what my responsibilities were. Delta Force, Commander. The words weren't meant to intimidate, but they landed like a weight. Silence followed, thick and heavy, pressing down on the room. At first he laughed, the sound sharp and forced. Denial is a natural reaction when reality threatens ego, but laughter doesn't last long when doubt creeps in. His eyes drifted to my hands, then my stance, then my expression. He started connecting dots he hadn't noticed before. The calm, the control, the way I hadn't flinched once. Slowly, the story he had believed about me began to collapse under its own. I didn't move toward him. I didn't need to. The power shift was internal, and he felt it. His confidence drained away as understanding replaced assumption. He realized he hadn't walked into a house to intimidate a weak husband. He had walked into the personal space of someone trained to assess threats and neutralize them efficiently. Someone who had dealt with far worse men in far worse places and lived. Fear doesn't always look like panic. Sometimes it looks like hesitation, like a man suddenly unsure of his next move. His grip on the knife loosened, his shoulders dropped. He started talking faster, backtracking, trying to reframe the situation as a misunderstanding. But there was no misunderstanding anymore. The truth had been spoken, and it couldn't be unheard. In that moment, he finally understood the depth of his mistake. Not because I said anything dramatic, but because the illusion he had relied on was gone. He had built his courage on the belief that I was ordinary. Once that belief shattered, everything else followed. The revelation wasn't about status or rank, it was about reality, and reality had just stepped into the room, calm, steady, and completely in control. What followed wasn't an explosion of violence or a reckless outburst of anger. It was restraint, measured, deliberate, and absolute. The moment he hesitated, I knew the confrontation had already shifted into its final phase. People expect revenge to be loud, emotional, chaotic. That's how movies portray it. But real control doesn't come from rage. It comes from discipline, from knowing exactly how far to go and when to stop. I didn't need to prove anything to him. I needed to end the threat. I told him to leave, not as a request, not as a plea, but as a final instruction. He tried to save face, muttering excuses, blaming alcohol, misunderstanding, even my wife. I let him talk. Words are harmless once power has been stripped from them. I stepped just close enough for him to understand that if he crossed another line, there would be consequences he couldn't talk his way out of. My voice never rose. My hands stayed relaxed at my sides. That calm unsettled him more than shouting ever could. When he made one last poor decision, one step forward instead of back, I reacted without drama. It was fast, controlled, and over before his mind caught up with his body. There was no brutality for the sake of punishment, no unnecessary harm, just efficiency. He ended up on the floor, disarmed, stunned not just by pain alone, but by how easily it had happened. The illusion of his dominance didn't just crack, it shattered completely. I didn't gloat. I didn't threaten his life or promise revenge. I knelt just enough for him to hear me clearly and told him this was finished. That if he ever came near me or my home again, the consequences wouldn't end with embarrassment. The certainty in my words mattered more than their content. He nodded, eyes wide, finally understanding the imbalance between us. This wasn't a fight he could win by bravado or numbers. It never had been. I helped him to his feet, not out of kindness, but closure. Power isn't proven by how hard you hit someone when they're down. It's proven by control over yourself when you could do far worse. I walked him to the door, opened it, and waited. He didn't look back. He didn't say another word. The roar of his motorcycle as he left sounded different than when he arrived, less confident, less aggressive, smaller. When the door closed, the house was silent again. No cheers, no satisfaction rush, just resolution. Retribution isn't about indulging anger, it's about restoring balance. He had come looking to intimidate, to humiliate, to dominate. He left with a lesson he would carry longer than any bruise. And that was...
After he was gone, the house didn't feel the same, but it felt lighter. The tension he brought with him lingered for a few moments, then slowly dissolved into something quieter. Clarity. I stood alone in the living room, listening to my own breathing, steady and controlled, the way it always had been under pressure. What surprised me wasn't how easily I had handled him, but how little satisfaction I felt afterward. Victory, real victory, rarely comes with celebration. It comes with certainty. The truth was unavoidable now. The marriage I thought I was protecting no longer existed in the form I had believed. Betrayal had already done its damage long before a biker showed up at my door. His attack didn't create the end, it exposed it. And in that exposure, something important shifted inside me. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was deciding. When my wife came home later and realized what had happened, there were tears, explanations, panic-driven apologies. I listened without interruption. Not because I was seeking answers, but because I wanted to hear how much responsibility she would actually take. It became clear quickly that she was more afraid of consequences than remorseful about choices. That told me everything I needed to know. Respect, once broken at that level, doesn't return through words. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't threaten. I simply stated that I was done. Done explaining myself, done carrying weight that wasn't mine, done confusing loyalty with endurance. Power isn't just physical,
It's emotional, psychological, and moral. Taking control of my life meant refusing to negotiate my dignity any longer. She argued at first, then pleaded, then went quiet when she realized the decision was already made. In the days that followed, rumors circulated. The biker disappeared from her life entirely. People asked questions. I didn't offer explanations. I had nothing to prove to anyone. Those who needed to know understood without details. Those who didn't were irrelevant. Peace has a way of clarifying priorities. What remained was something I hadn't felt in a long time: alignment. My actions matched my values again. There was no anger eating at me from the inside, no desire for revenge, no need to dominate anyone else. The threat had been neutralized. The betrayal had been acknowledged. The chapter was closed. That was enough. Restoring power isn't about humiliating others or rewriting history to make yourself look heroic. It's about standing firm in truth and walking forward without carrying the weight of disrespect. The man who attacked me thought power was something you take by force. He was wrong. Real power is something you reclaim by refusing to live beneath your own standards. That night, for the first time in a long while, I slept deeply. Not because I had won a confrontation, but because I had reclaimed control over my life. Whatever came next, divorce, rebuilding, solitude, I would face it on my own terms. Calm, grounded, unshakable.